Hello everyone, I'm Annie Gibbins and you're listening to Memoirs of Successful Women, the podcast where you get to hear candid conversations with fascinating women from around the globe who share aspects of their business and life journey, how they measure their success and what they have learned along the way. Hello and welcome to Memoirs of Successful Women. Today I am introducing you to the lovely Debbie Gissoni, and we're going to be talking about all things reinventing and rebooting your life and your career. Debbie is the founder of Self Power Now. She's a self-empowerment catalyst, a wellness expert, a women's empowerment expert, business advisor, author, speaker, host, moderator, storyteller. She's all things women's empowerment. And she's also had a diverse background with a parallel career, much like myself, in C-suite executive positions and advisory, and also as an entrepreneur in health and wellness. So welcome to the program, Debbie.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
It is such a joy to have you on my program. So let's just dive in. Why does a woman who's been a leader in corporate and not-for-profit organizations suddenly start talking about, well, it's really important to empower yourself, love yourself, grow yourself, worry about your health and wellness? Why is that such an important side passion for you?
Well, it actually became my main passion after I left my full-time corporate job way back when. And I have to say, life experiences, right, change your life. Yeah. And you could either learn from them and move forward and figure out if there's something in those experiences that you can take forward and help others with, or you can wallow in self-pity. And while I was in the corporate market, probably in my late 20s to mid 30s, I was going through a very tragic time in my personal life. So on the corporate side, I was very successful. I was at the top of my game. I was one of the few and only women at this level, and it was in tech. So, it was very male dominated industry. And I was just, moving up the corporate ladder, right? Like we all want to do.
Yeah.
And at the same time, my family was falling apart. First, my mother got a brain tumor that was operated on, but left her non-fully functional, left her in need of 24/7 care. Wow. Then shortly after that, my younger sister committed suicide at 23 years old. And that kind of came out of the blue for all of us. Right after that, my father developed multiple myeloma, which is a form of bone cancer. And then I'm from New York, but I was living in California for my job at the time. And my aunt, who I was living with, because I was only in my, early 20s at the time, she developed breast cancer. Now, all four of those family members, mother, father, sister, and my aunt, all died within a 4-year consecutive period of time. Wow. While I was, racing up the corporate ladder. Yeah. And I just kept doing what I knew how to do best, and that was business until, and kind of compartmentalize all that on the side and not really bring all of that stuff, that emotional stuff into work, because at the time, my job, I was pretty high level. I had a lot of responsibility. I had a lot of people depending on me. I had a profit center within, that I was responsible for, the P&L. Yeah. And it took about another, I'd say about 4 years after that last death for me to say, something's not quite right. Yeah. I don't feel good about my job anymore. I don't feel like it's fulfilling for me. And my body was giving me lots of signals, as your body normally does. Yeah. I used to travel a lot, and all of a sudden I was getting sick all the time. Everywhere I went, it was like I was getting colds and flus and whatnot, feeling really run down and stressed. And I just felt like, things just had no meaning anymore in my life. And I knew that I needed, whether you call it a reboot, at that time, I called it a change. I knew I needed change, but I didn't really know what was going to be next. Yeah. So I did the thing that most people say would be the stupidest thing to do. I just left my job.
Generally not recommended, but sometimes essential for your own livelihood, right?
Well, the thing is after going through all that, I didn't really have the wherewithal or the coping skills or the type of job where I could actually work through that and also work.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I had to step off. I had to step off the treadmill, so to speak. And it was the best thing that I ever did. Even though I didn't know what I was going to do, it put me on this sort of personal and spiritual journey that allowed me to reconnect with the real me and my true self, my true spirit, and allowed me to figure out what it was I really wanted to do. And out of that was born a lot of writing. And I started writing books. My first book was about my family ordeal and how I got through that, and how other people, tips and things about how other people could get through life challenges and grief and loss and death and all that stuff. Probably the most difficult thing we all have to get through, right, in life.
Yeah.
And it started a whole new career that I started talking to lots of corporate women about, who were not satisfied maybe in their careers, who wanted to change, and they wanted to know, how did I do it? And then from that book became another book on happiness, and then another book on self-love, and then a course on hypnotherapy. And I became certified in hypnotherapy, and then life coaching and holistic coaching. And so that's that parallel career that it launched.
Yeah.
And I never really went back to what I would consider a full-time corporate job. I actually have been doing contract work and consulting all this time because I do love business and I do love leadership. But I think that what I loved most about it when I was doing it full-time was mentoring people, right? To me, it was all about the people. I wasn't too concerned about the industry I was in at that time. It was tech, and tech didn't really excite me. I know, sorry for the techies that might be listening, but that was not the exciting part to me. I was in the magazine publishing industry, so that the publication industry excited me, but definitely not the industry. It was the people that I loved mentoring and teaching and empowering. And I thought, wow, that is my calling in life. And so I went from, high tech to, I'd say, high touch, right? But it was that was my path.
Wow. What an incredible journey, and what boldness to actually just go, you know what, I just have to completely step off the treadmill and find myself. Because I was hearing as you were speaking there that it was a time of self-exploration. You're sharing that you didn't actually really know the essence of who you were. You knew that you liked certain parts and you didn't like others, and you were busily becoming incredibly successful on the surface, but it actually required you to unpack and then be bold enough to do that journey. Let's tell the listeners, those people who are sort of in that place at the moment, and you make these big decisions and you then sort of step off, or you choose to sort of recalibrate and then go, oh no, everyone will be, I'm assuming you had a lot of people going, what are you doing? You're crazy. What made you make a dumb decision like that? I love the blanket statements of someone else's perspective on your life, but you're also sitting there at a time going, but I needed to do this. Explain a little bit about, what that time was like, so that others can sort of go, yes, that gives me hope. I can push through.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right. My friends and family and my colleagues, because they never really saw what was going on in my personal life, they thought I was crazy. They thought, some of them came to me and said, "Are you dying?" Or, literally, they thought that could be the only excuse why she'd be leaving, just like that. And of course, I gave them enough time. I gave them, I think, 3 months notice or something like that. But as you said, if we make our decisions and run our life as we normally do, which is by the outer world, then we're going to get stuck in a lot of suffering. And rebooting your life or changing your life or making any kind of big decisions in your life really requires you to go within and stop looking outside for those decisions and look within. There was something inside of me at that time that said, I have got to do this. I knew it in my heart. It wasn't a mental process at all, because from the outside, that looked like a really foolish decision, right? But inside, I knew that was the right thing for me. I didn't know why, but I was following my heart. And when you do go along that path and you have to make some big decisions in life, or you want to reboot, or you want to make some sort of positive change in your life. Maybe you're not happy enough, or you're not healthy enough, or you don't feel loved, or you don't feel peaceful in any way, or you're too stressed. The only answer is to go within, because you can't change the outer world without changing your inner world. And that's where things like self-awareness come in. And I took a journey in self-awareness. I mean, I was this like, gosh, type A personality. I don't think you ever changed that. I probably still am, but I never imagined in a million years that I would be the type of person who could sit quietly and just, get rid of my thoughts, or meditate, or just play and not worry about work. Right.
Yeah.
All those things that really connect you to your true inner power, your true inner self, that help you gain the self-awareness and the clarity so that you can make the right decisions for you. And everybody is so unique. And I'm not saying everyone should, leave their corporate job if they're not happy. At that time, that was the right decision for me. But there are so many ways these days that you can go to that place, you can get more self-awareness and meditate or be quiet, that maybe were not available, I think they were available back then, but they maybe were not as accepted.
Yeah.
Right. In the mainstream anyway. Yeah.
I think that's been a whole pioneering sort of place over the last decade, definitely, of things that weren't acceptable in the mainstream suddenly are becoming more. We are more open talking about mental health and needing to have balance, work-life balance, gender equality. These sorts of
yes.
Topics are at the forefront now. We've still got a long way to go, but at least we can be open to that conversation. And that's right. Sometimes people just need to go, you know what, this isn't working. I just need a total break. And I have known and coached women who have been in that sort of situation. And then there's also, ones like me probably who, I still keep my CEO role, and I also do my business and life coaching on the side. And I do that parallel because for me, instead of, working ridiculous hours in my CEO role, I actually do what's appropriate, what is required for the role, because you don't need to prove yourself. I think a lot of people are also in situations and you go, well, when you think about it, are you, working yourself silly, or are you asking for opportunities, like I do, that actually ask, can I stretch my hours so I can fit in some other things? Can you work around a family? Can you get that balance? Now that 10 years ago, the automatic response would have went, no, if you're not up to this job, you can't do it. Exactly. Whereas definitely now there's often a more flexibility there, and definitely since COVID, and or realize that people can actually work flexibly, I think we're up to a whole new space there.
And I think something that you said about proving yourself, I think is definitely a woman's challenge more than a man in the corporate market. Because I worked in an industry for many years, 15 years, where it was predominantly male dominated. And I was also very young at the time. And so I was a young woman who, when I stepped in a room with some, tech guys or, corporate leaders at that time, I felt like I had to prove myself immediately. Yes. without them, whereas a man, just from his experience or title, it's kind of a given, right?
100%.
Yeah.
I've had those conversations, and I've been in those situations, and I have those conversations with many people, particularly women, that you say, once you stop trying to, impress to yourself that you're good enough, that you will actually skyrocket, because people can tell the difference. You don't have to prove your worth. If you're at that table, if you're in that position, you are worthy. And, there's many reasons that we can unpack on another show about that. But, a lot of it is around the way we're raised as girls of, more being the assistants and the helpers rather than the leaders and people who be making decisions. What surprises did you learn about yourself during this time? You've gone from this type A, working in these corporate roles like a bit of a machine, I'm imagining, and then go, wow, who would have ever thought that I could take time out and self-discover? What was the main surprise that you learned about yourself that you would have never realized if you didn't take this journey?
Well, I think when you're young in your 20s or even 30s, you feel like you are who you are. And I think what surprised me is how much I've evolved and how much I've changed, even in little things like being in traffic, for example, where
Yeah.
I was always, I was that angry driver, get me to where I'm getting, and I don't want to be in traffic and
And
avoid
you're
it at every
honking your
point. And
horn.
yeah, I'm from New York, so we tend to drive aggressively. I don't live there now, but I had that really aggressive kind of like get out of my way sort of thing.
Yeah.
Whereas now
You're
I'm
like,
very much more relaxed about letting life happen rather than trying to make it happen. And that's I never would have imagined I'd be like that. In fact, years ago I might have seen that as a weakness rather than a strength, right?
yeah, yeah, exactly. And I think that's a great point for those listening is that feeling of when you take time out just to be present and to actually
Mhm.
just be in the moment and to let things wash over you. Often when you're a high achiever type, you can think, well, that's wasted time. You should be, if you're strategic at work, you should be strategic in all aspects of your life, or you should be, if you're goal oriented at work, you have to have a goal, you have to have a reason. Whereas actually it can show that you can still be 100% competent in a work environment and then also be pretty chilled out and relaxed and fully present in the other aspects, like driving in traffic, like
Right. And the thing is there are a lot of things in life you can plan, like business strategy and things like that, where if you do A plus B, you're going to get C, or plan a trip or plan your daughter's birthday party or whatever that is. There's a lot of things that you can plan and control. But
yeah.
there are so many other things that you can't control in life. And where we suffer the most is trying to think that we can control all of it, right? and then something like COVID happens, right? And you're like, oh my God, how could this happen? And I don't have any control, and you feel powerless. But
Yeah.
the thing is you can't control everything in life. You have to surrender. I call that self-surrender, but the small s, right? You have to surrender that little ego
Yeah.
voice, pesky voice in your head that keeps telling you that you can control things when you actually can't. The only thing you can control is how you react to those things that happen that are out of your control. And then we ruminate in our mind about the past and what we could have done, should have done, coulda, shoulda, woulda kind of thing. And that's already happened, or
Right.
even the future, what will happen or what. And that's completely out of our hands too. So sitting and just being in the present and knowing that you can only control this present moment, what I'm saying to you right this moment, and to be present with that is quite empowering. It's
Yes.
not weak at all. It's quite empowering.
It really is. So when you started to then think, I'm going to start writing and let this come out of my being and share my learnings with others, why did you choose the topic of happiness? Why is it that you were craving happiness, that other people are looking for happiness? Why that topic?
Well, that's a good question, because when I left my job and I started thinking, oh, I'm going to write. I always loved to write when I was young. And I did a lot of writing in corporate, of course, in marketing and things like that. And the first thing I thought I was going to write about, I'm Italian and I love to cook and I love everything about food, was I started putting together notes for an Italian cookbook. I thought
Okay.
this is really what will be creative for me and whatever. But I kept getting this nagging sort of thing in the back of my head, and I would go to sleep at night and I would get all these ideas for this memoir called Vita's Will, which was my first book, about this journey that I went through when all these tragedies were happening in my family. And literally, like full chapters would be like, okay, talk about this and then talk about this next and talk about this. And I think it was my spirit talking to me saying, this is what you need to release. This is what you need to get out of your soul first, is this book about death and dying and moving on. In fact, the subtitle is Real Life Lessons About Death, Dying, and Moving On. Um, because that's what I did. And I think that I had some extremely good coping mechanisms for that I wanted to share with others. And so that was the first book that came, I want to say, pouring out of me. And I don't know if you write, or when you talk to authors, I don't think someone says, I'm going to write a book about X, or I'm going to write this type of book, to me, that never worked because I thought I was going to write a cookbook. And instead, I wrote a book about death and dying. It's like, okay, because that's what was coming through, right?
Yeah.
You have to listen. That's what was coming through. And it was a very cathartic experience for me as well, which I probably needed at the time. So then I was going on all these talk shows and doing interviews and whatever. And sometimes underneath my name, they would put Debbie Gissoni, death and dying expert. And I said, oh no. I am not going to be going down my life as the death and dying expert. That's not me. The whole point of the book was to show people that there was light at the end of the tunnel, right?
Yeah.
So then I started writing a blog at the time about happiness. And I thought, okay, I'm more about happiness. I'm a positive person. I always see the glass half full. I always choose love above hate. I want to write about happiness. And that ended up pouring out as my second book, The Goddess of Happiness. So that's how that came. Again, still haven't written the cookbook, right? And then, and those two books, the first two books were nonfiction.
Yeah.
One was kind of a memoir, self-help book, and the other one was completely self-help called The Goddess of Happiness, Down-to-Earth Guide for Heavenly Balance and Bliss, which gave women, especially, like just practical tips, for the everyday woman on how to bring more happiness and joy into their life. Right. And it wasn't a story. It was just all separate chapters, right? 44 separate chapters. And then I thought, I don't know what was the next book that was going to come through me, but I started again. I don't know what happens in my sleep. I do keep a notebook by my nightstand with a pen. And I don't know when it was, I guess this was about 2008, 2009, 10, around there. All of a sudden, this story sort of came through me that was not a nonfiction book. It was actually a fiction book, but it was all about self-love, which I think is one of the most important lessons we're all here to learn.
Yeah.
And this whole story emerged. It was set in New York. It was a little mystery. It was a little, fun. It was about a woman who really gave up on life, but then she got somehow saved, but a spirit guide it had all these elements of all kinds of fun and paranormal and food. It had a lot of food. So I got to write about food. Finally, I got to write about some food. And that book came out, and that was called Note to Self-Love. So in your question about, how did I decide what to write about? I didn't. These three books just came pouring out of me. And then when COVID hit, I thought, I'm sure another book's going to come. Yeah. Again, we set these expectations, right? We think we know, and we think we have control. And I was waiting. And I have all these folders of like just notes about books I might want to write, maybe something on relationships or something on dreams or something on this or something like that. And I kept going back to those folders day in and day out, looking at them, staring at them, putting them away, looking at them, staring at them, putting them away. Like, okay, it's not flowing. And a book never did emerge during COVID lockdown for me. But what did emerge was something completely different. Is I started writing a complete set of online courses for self-empowerment and that's the emergence of Self-Power Now. Yeah. And I wrote these courses over a period of the first year, and now they're out, and there's one on happiness, one on health, one on love, be loved now, and one on spirituality, or be Zen now, or how to, reduce stress and peace. And now I created those, and I said, well, I guess that's what's coming through me now. And I made them available to both individuals and corporations, because, from my background, I realized, wow, there's going to be a lot of stressed employees these days. Pre, post, during, and post COVID. Right. And so I made that available for corporations as well. So that was my next project. So I have not really planned much of which is not me, because I'm such a planner. I'm, I'm the one with the lists, like check off the list, plan everything. But as far as my creative work goes, nothing has ever been planned.
Which maybe is you now. Maybe that definition, that self-definition of this is not me, actually that wasn't me, but now I've got these little parts of me that when I'm leaning into that essence and that true, heartfelt, what is that next step that comes out of you organically is
Yes.
actually a new version of you, which I love as you continue to evolve. It's like, well, that's surprising me.
Yeah.
I
I
know, I
called
love
it,
it
I
when you
think one,
surprise yourself.
I think one time years ago, I called it Debbie Light because, I was always so intense and so serious. And now I'm like, okay, let's go with the flow and see what comes through. I don't know what the next thing will be, but I'm open to it. And that's what makes life so special and makes people happier, right? Is to just be open and willing to receive what you're hearing, what you're feeling, and being connected to that voice that's coming from your heart, not your head, not what your head's trying to tell you to do, because usually your head's not right, but your heart.
My head is definitely not right regularly.
Oh gosh. Yeah, I know.
I can share that with
That's the ego.
I
Yeah.
overthink. I worry about this. I used to be so locked down to other, particularly family expectations, what was right, all this sort of thing. And I tell you what, you just skyrocket and you actually become way more happier and more zen when you unshackle those anchors and those weights. Like, well, who cares? You've got to be respectful, but you're actually living your life. You're the CEO of your own life, your own destiny. And so by belief, I think there's a whole element of belief in yourself, and then starting to nurture and love yourself to be that best self. And then also at the same time, unshackling the other restrictors, when other people say things are crazy. Yeah, they might seem crazy, but not for me. I'm enjoying the ride. I'm enjoying the journey, or I'll see what's next. Or that's right. Or even getting to a place which I can hear that you're at now, you're going, I don't even know what is next. And it's not terrifying, because it's fascinating. You'd like to know, but it's not terrifying. Whereas when you're on that treadmill, you have to know the exact, because you got to plan for it. Whereas I love that whole creative space that you go, well, now you've got a learning platform. Now you just don't know where the next little bit's going. Why did you also introduce hypnotherapy? Why have you gone off and done that as well? And how does that work in the whole mix of what you do?
Yes. So when I first left that first corporate job, I did do a lot of investigating in meditation, right? And I wanted to learn how to meditate. I wanted to learn how to be quiet. And I did a lot of work in that respect, whether it was taking workshops or going to classes or just doing my own practice, right? And it is a practice, just like yoga. When they say yoga's practice, you never get it quite right. There's no right or wrong. And you just have to be really gentle with yourself. And I was always fascinated with the subconscious and being able to get to a place of relaxation where you can access that subconscious, where you could make positive change in your life. And in a way, meditation is like that. And hypnotherapy really is just another form of meditation. So the great thing when I was on this journey was I got to take and learn about things that I had a real keen interest. I didn't think, oh, I'm going to go out and be a hypnotherapist now or whatnot. I mean, I I'm certified in it, but I really was learning about it for my own benefit because I wanted to go deeper into meditation. I wanted to learn how the brain waves work and how to help people get through serious challenges. And what is that programming that needs to be reprogramming? And that's what hypnotherapy does. It's basically meditation, but with suggestion. It's not, the stage hypnotherapy that most people think of, like, oh, I'm going to make you quack like a dog. That's a totally different area. And it's not what I do. I could never make you quack like a dog and quack like a duck. In fact, most people, you can't make anybody do anything they really don't want to do. It's sort of this false belief people think about hypnotherapy, but it is a field that allowed me to really learn more about the psyche, learn more about how the mind works and how the connection with your feelings and outcomes work. I remember one of the best examples they gave in class about the connection between your mind and body was they went through this exercise where, and I could do it with you right now. And I'd say, okay, imagine you have a cutting board and you have a lemon, a nice tart lemon on that cutting board, and you're cutting that lemon. I'm going to go through it a little faster. And you're squeezing that juice, and that juice is coming onto your tongue. You're probably already salivating, right? Because you can, just by me describing that, and that's that connection. And that tells us that we can change. We can change how we think and how we feel about things through hypnotherapy, through meditation, through the right words and the right circumstances, right? So it was fascinating. And then from there, after I did the hypnotherapy, I decided, well, I want to learn more about, coaching people on holistic care, not only just life coaching, but about the body and health and nutrition and all that, because those are things I've always been interested in all my life. I've been a fitness person, an exercise person, a foodie all my life. And so I took on that. And it just, hypnotherapy and coaching gave me more depth to everything else I was writing about and teaching about.
You are such a fascinating lady. I'm just loving this conversation.
Great.
What can we be doing differently then if you look back and go, okay, well, did I have to leave the corporate space? What could corporate environment do better to actually support people who go, well, I'm not brave enough, or I don't have that sort of, I don't have enough resources behind me at this time to leave that and have this self-discovery to recalibrate. Yeah. What can the corporate environment, how can we, particularly in our roles as influencers in this space, how can we help environments to try and rectify some of the key problems?
Right. First of all, I think we've come a long way from when I left, which was back in around 2000. So we've got, 20 years of advancement in that arena. I also, and I don't know if you came in the same area in corporate, but at the time, there was this expectation of just, working 80 hours a week and not having anything besides work. And I think that has shifted quite a bit. So there's not that expectations. And at that time, there were no wellness programs in corporations. There was no talk about, mental stability or meditation or reducing stress. There were just regular health insurance, right? Yeah. Nobody was talking about it then. Whereas now I think corporations are well beyond that and well understand that. And there's research now that backs it up. I mean, I've been talking about this for years, but research backs up that employees who are happier and healthier are also more productive, better leaders, better colleagues. They're more creative. They're out sick less. So absentee less. So as soon as corporations figured out that there was a bottom line effect to having a better wellness and well-being among their employees, then they started listening, right? Of course, because if it saves the money, it's going to make the money. If it costs the money, it's going to lose the money. So it's the same old, same old. I don't think it's corporations that have changed. I just think that there's more information now that show them the importance of well-being for their employees. So once they found that out, then they started looking at, programs and courses and flexible work schedules and whatnot. And then COVID hit, which made it even more exaggerated, right? In terms of what employees might need and not having the social aspect and kind of figuring out ways that, they can bring their employees together with different team events online now and whatnot. So they're much, much more open to this. Now, I'm not saying all companies are like that. Of course not. But I think that most of the larger companies now are on the bandwagon. And they also see that employees are going to be choosing to work for organizations that are more caring, a word that, used to only be attributed to like the mom and pop, little companies, right? Like, you work with a family company and you feel like part of the family, you feel like people care about you. In larger corporations, the bottom line was more important than the people. And now they can't do that all the time, right? I
Exactly.
mean, they could do it, but in the long run, it's not really going to be a good contributor to their success.
Yeah, well, you won't get a successful bottom line if you don't highly value people these days. Because I
Yeah.
love what you said there, that's right. People have changed. People now have had this moment in time through the pandemic that they've suddenly reevaluated everything. And now many
Yes.
of them have decided to, have their own startups or rebalance their life or make different decisions. And then so that empowerment of the applicant, the employee, has actually helped them now saying, well, it's not just will you pick me, it's like, is it a good fit? And I've even adjusted even as a boss for my staff of, I know that, a couple of my employees are just so much happier and they contribute so much more just because I give them flexibility on, leaving early, picking up kids from school and then working from home a little bit later. Well, that's just saved them. One, they're the mum at the gate. Two, they don't have to pay for after school care. They're allowed to go home, settle them down, and then they'll work. I have not noticed any difference in their output.
Exactly.
In fact, they're happier. And so I love what you said too about the evidence base. That's exactly right. Once you have data, we weren't looking for that data before. Whereas once you start looking at that data, all of the data suggests if you've got a happier, healthier team, then you're going to do better, in business. So
exactly. I think I was a little ahead of my time because back in the day, and I had a lot of salespeople working for me, and sales, you can work crazy hours, and they're on the road a lot too. And I used to say, I don't really care to know where you are, as long as you get your job done and your numbers are good. You can get your hair cut in the middle of the day or go visit someone. It doesn't matter. What did I care when they got their work done, as long as the work got done? And I never, and people love that. And they actually performed fantastically.
Yeah, exactly. I think you were a lot more before your time. Exactly. This concept that everything happens between 9 and 5 is just crazy. And particularly because we're now, many of us, in a global environment, our 9 to 5 isn't someone else's anyway. And so I look back now, and that's why I'm trying to make massive changes for women moving forward in business, because I had that journey of, I had 5 kids, but that's right. You had to be at the office 9 to 5. There was no flexible work environment. And not just 9 to 5, you always had to do more and not get paid for it. And then I think in a lot of work environments, because we have done that and not complained or actually said that's not appropriate, that's probably why we've had that creep of, when you said before, you've got this job that requires 80 hours. Well, when did 80 hours become an appropriate?
The norm. Yeah. We set the precedents. Yeah,
we actually said it and went and said, oh, well, okay, because that's right. And we often had a little joke, oh my gosh, when I leave, you're going to need 2 people to replace me. You're actually kind of right though, because if you were working 80 hours, so I think we have given ourselves a disservice, and that's what I've noticed as well. One, just to pull back and go, no, this is the role, this is what it takes, and sort of to back yourself in that. And if someone else wants to work double the amount for the same pay, well, that's their choice in their life. Well, but they'll burn out, they won't be.
It only leads to burnout. Which is probably where I was when I left corporate at the burnout level.
Burnout
for
is
sure
messy. It's just horrible. You would not wish it on anyone.
Right. You need to have work be, just a part of your life, but not be all of your life. And it's difficult now because we are working from home and you can connect at any time. So if you have that like type A personality, like I've always been, it's hard to disconnect, right?
Exactly.
So
you're in bed.
You have to force yourself. You have to force yourself. And if that's what you got to do, you've got to force yourself to just, carve out the time, whether you put it on your calendar or whatnot. And these days, everyone could look at your calendar and just carve out your personal time, that you need on your calendar.
Exactly. And do it first. Block it out, block out those break times before it gets filled in. So it's not an optional extra. It's actually, no, this is what's required, and I'll fill around that. I think that's always worked well for me. Well, this has just been such a fantastic conversation. Let's just finish up our conversation now with, well, what does success mean for you? This podcast is Memoirs of Successful Women. You're a very successful woman, but you've really done it in your own way. How would you define success now?
now would be defined very differently
Yes.
than I used to define it, which was all those outer things, right? Having the job, the title, the status, the car, the clothes, that's what I thought success was about. And then when I saw what happened to my family, it really sort of reprioritizes what's important in life and what really is success. And I think success is what makes you happy, doing what makes you, if you're doing something that makes you happy, that's success. It doesn't really matter if you're making money at that. Maybe you make money somewhere else, right?
Yeah.
But if you're happy and you feel like you're serving yourself and even more so serving others with your happiness or whatever you're doing, then that's a successful life to me.
Yeah. Beautifully said.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for being on my program today. I've just absolutely loved our conversation, and I know the listeners have as well. How do they find you, Debbie, if they want to reach out to you and hear more?
Sure. The easiest thing is to just go to my site, which is selfpowernow.com. And I do want to mention that I do give away some freebies on the site. And one is we were talking about meditation and whatnot. And a lot of people like guided meditations where they can just sit and listen. So if you go to free gifts on the site, you can get a free guided meditation. I have kind of like a happiness bundle. There's a couple of things in there, but the audio is a guided meditation. And it's just a journey through nature. And it only takes 10 minutes. And if you only have 10 minutes to just be with yourself a day, it's a nice exercise to do, or right before you go to sleep at night, either before you go to sleep or in the morning. And it's free. You can download it to your device. So if you go to selfpowernow.com, you'll see the little icon that says free gifts, and then everything else about that I've been talking about. My books are all on there. I'll be launching a podcast soon. So if you want to get on that list, let me know. And the courses, of course, are on there too. Be happy now, be healthy now, be zen now, and be loved now. All the things we want out of life.
Oh, I love it. Happy, healthy, zen. Oh, they're all.
And loved.
And
Loved is really important. Don't we all want to be loved?
So important. We all want to be loved, and it starts with loving yourself in all the
exactly. You hit the nail on the head. Yes.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
Right. And it's just such a journey to learn that, and such a mystery to us. Why do we get it so wrong? Why do we take so long to realize that? We think that all those acts of service are going to just make us happy, and sometimes they do, and sometimes they don't. They're just an anchor, and they take our time and our energy and essence. Absolute joy having you on my program, Debbie.
Thank you.
For the listeners, go and get those freebies. Who doesn't want a love bomb like that? Wow. I think I'm just going to have a guided meditation myself today. It's Saturday morning in Australia, so that sounds like a really good idea.
Yes.
Fantastic. Thanks for being on my program, and all the best for your future success. You're absolutely
Thank you so much.
Fabulous.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for listening to this episode of Memoirs of Successful Women. You can find me at anniegibbins.com, where you can download my free resources, get connected on social, and check out my online magic transformation program. If you love this show, feel free to subscribe to future episodes, and of course, share it with your friends. I'll see you again soon, and until then, happy podcasting.